What's up guys, it's Drifts and Lifts here. Alright, so today's video, we're going to be stepping away from the Volvo stuff for a little bit in the name of science. So I am at Post Haste Performance here in Chilliwack, BC. We're going to be testing out a couple parts that some companies have gifted us on the engine dyno here. So what we have is a Kangaroo's Team 1JZ cast manifold. So this is a cool manifold. It's different from the tubular design because it is made out of cast. It's really strong, and we're going to be testing in comparison to the tubular eBay manifold that we have on the dyno right now. So after we're done that, we're also going to be comparing a real Garrett 3582 to this max peating rods, basically the copy of the same turbo, just max peating rod style. So let's check out what engine we're going to be working with here. All right guys, so this is Dan here, owner of Post Haste Performance. So what do we got on the engine dyno here today, Dan?
So this is a Toyota 1JZ-GTE non-VVTi, so one of the earlier engines. Would have been maybe a JDM Mark III Supra or a Toyota Sora. This is maybe not a combination of parts that I would typically use or suggest, but it's a very typical setup that I see come through the shop. I'm using both kind of an eBay manifold on the turbo side, on the exhaust side, and an eBay style intake manifold as well. Not typically a setup that I use, but I think it's a good engine to just do some testing with. So this is a stock bottom end. It has some ARP hardware throughout. It's got a metal head gasket and some Brian Crower 264 camshafts. It's got a quite old but genuine Garrett 3582R with a, again, old but genuine HKS 4-bolt 50mm wastegate. So for the fuel system, we're using 1000cc injectors. I am running ethanol E60, and we are using our Max ECU race as the control for this setup today.
Shout out to Fish Racing Tech, so they actually hooked us up with this oil cap here. Pretty sweet, just, you know, nicer look than the stock one. All right, so what is our plan of attack here today, Dan, as far as our testing goes?
Okay, so I think we'll do a couple of baseline pulls, make sure this is up to temperature, and see what we get for power-wise. I have a good idea, but let's confirm. And then once we've baselined that, we'll do 3 good runs to make sure it's a realistic power output, and then we'll start swapping parts. I think we'll probably change the manifold first, and then we'll switch the turbos afterwards. Yeah, I'm excited to see.
So what are we going to be running for boost? I guess it's just on the stock weight, or sorry, the wastegate spring right now with no boost control.
Yeah, for sure.
So Dan just checked the previous logs, and it looks like this wastegate with this spring in it is running about 17 pounds of boost. So we're probably going to keep it around there. When we swap over the turbos and the manifolds, we're going to keep the boost the same, so it gives us a good idea of the performance of the individual parts.
Yeah.
All right, so what we got here is the average of 3 runs with the eBay manifold and the Garrett GT 3582. So what we got here is 496.9 horsepower, 390 foot-pounds of torque on roughly 17 pounds of boost, just over 17 pounds of boost. So now what we're gonna do is install our Kangaroo's Team manifold. We're gonna try this manifold with the same turbo on the same amount of boost. All right, so we got our Kangaroo Team exhaust manifold installed. We got our Garrett turbo on here with the same wastegate setting. So something to note is this manifold was a lot easier to install, a little bit easier to get to all the nuts and as well as put the turbo on. So you know, that's definitely a plus as far as this manifold goes over that tubular one. So now let's see how much power it makes in comparison on the same wastegate spring, same amount of boost, same turbo. Let's see how she stacks up. Alright guys, so we got some interesting results to look over here. So tell us a little bit about what happened there, Dan.
So we've just run the Kangaroos team cast manifold, and yeah, kind of interesting results. So the actual turbo spool time, or the boost onset, is between 500 and 600 RPM sooner than with the tubular manifold. So actually torque all the way up to 5,000 RPM is increased over the tubular, and what we find after that is after around 6, they trade places, and the tubular manifold takes over. What I can see from the boost chart is that we are dropping some boost up towards the top, so we could likely close that gap of power. I should say that the tubular manifold made 496 peak horsepower. The cast manifold made 469 peak horsepower. We could likely close that gap, maybe match them with changing boost control, but that's not what we were here to do today. So this is apples to apples. There's no boost control going on other than the wastegate directly. So yeah, I would say that the drop in boost at the higher RPM is just an indication that the exhaust pressure is higher on this manifold than the tubular manifold.
So if you had to choose between the two manifolds, Dan, which one would you kind of go with?
I really like the idea of cast manifolds. I've dealt with stainless steel manifolds for a long time, and lots of them crack, lots of them become a pain after a year or two. And as far as serviceability, that also, you know, I work on this stuff all the time. So for us, something that's easily serviceable goes a long way. So I like the idea of the cast manifold. I like horsepower too, but I think you could bring it back. I think if we were here to see if they could both make peak power,
a little more boost control.
I think a little more boost control, it could come back. For me, on my vehicle, as far as packaging and ease of use, I'll take the earlier spool and the slight drop in horsepower. I like the idea of the cast manifold.
Yeah, for sure.
We should probably say, I'm not sure if we said in the earlier, I believe we're running this manifold upside down right now.
Perhaps, yes.
It can go both ways.
Yeah.
As far as the way that my wastegate was set up for the engine dyno, it was by far easier for us at this point to do a bottom mount setup, yeah, and throw the wastegate up the top.
So you probably wouldn't be running the wastegate up through the hood like that on a normal setup, but just for quick and easy in this application we did it like that. But really that's not going to affect the flow in any way because it's the exact same both ways.
The test is still valid. The test is still the same.
Yeah. So all in all, it's tough to say, you know, for your application which one would be better. I guess on a car, maybe a street car, the cast manifold's definitely going to be, you know, for one, it's easier to install. It's a little bit tighter of a package, and it does come in earlier with the spool, and the torque is better because of that. So maybe on an automatic car or a drift car where you want your engine to spool a little quicker, I guess the only time this tube manifold is really going to shine is in the top end past 6,000. All right, so we have our Max Speeding Rods GT 3582 replica turbo on the 1J right now. It's actually a ZY802 61443 is what they also call them, I suppose. So I guess what we're going to be comparing, guys, is the graph compared to our real Garrett turbo, and then honestly we're just going to see if it survives. You know, there's a lot of talk about eBay turbos on forums and stuff. Some people say they last 4 years. Some people say they last 4 minutes. So we're going to see what happens. We're not running an oil restrictor. This is a journal bearing turbo. It's a -10 drain, so pretty much the same setup as our ball bearing turbo, but the ball bearing had a restrictor on the inlet. So let's see how well this gold compressor wheel does. Alrighty guys, so here is the results of our Max Peating Rods turbo. So we got the graphs overlaid. This is our GT 3582 proper Garrett turbo versus the Max Peating Rods turbo on the same manifold, Kangaroo's manifold. So what we noticed is the exhaust housing is definitely smaller on the Max Peating Rods turbo. It's an AR63. We're actually not too sure on the size of the other turbo. We think it's a AR82 exhaust housing, but regardless, look at these graphs, guys. So the Max Peating Rods turbo, well, one thing we should note is the Max Peating Rods turbo stayed together. So so that's honestly pretty cool. We did run it fairly hard, you know, it's making up in the 450 horsepower range. But as you can see here, compared to that other turbo, probably just because of the exhaust housing, we're actually spooling about 400 to 500 RPM earlier. So we're actually making full boost around like the 3,800 mark. And torque and horsepower in that region is up quite a bit. So we actually have at that RPM level another 50 horsepower, 50 torque roughly. As you can see, we go up the graph, and the only time that the other turbo starts to shine a little bit better is up past kind of 6,000. It starts to pull a little bit harder, most likely due to that bigger exhaust housing. But you know, it's really not too far off. I'm not gonna lie, I am fairly impressed with Max Peating Rods turbo. I might honestly run these on my car. I will mention I am running the rods in my red block Volvo right now, and those haven't let me down yet. So honestly, you know, these guys might not make too bad of a quality product here. So for the price at least, you know, we're talking, here's our turbo right here on the Max Peating Rods site. If you guys want one of these turbos, I got a link in the description of this video if you want to check it out. So, you know, 240 American dollars, you can get the street performance or the standard performance. And yeah, it's honestly not too bad of a turbo. Dan, what do you think? Would you run one on your car?
I think I probably would give it a try, yeah. I think I would. I think if you can test it out and it does what we've done today. For sure. I think it's fine. I think the horror stories of when turbos are failing, most of the time it's a manufacturing defect from the beginning. Yeah. And it won't last. It's not going to last. Yeah. A couple pulls maybe. Yeah. I think we've proved it out here pretty good. Yeah. The RPM that these things spin is pretty crazy. So if it's going to come apart, you'll know pretty quickly. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. No, I think I would. For that price, you don't have a lot to lose. Exactly. Right? Yeah. You're gonna, if it blows up, you could buy another one, right? For sure. Yeah. As long as it doesn't wreck your engine, but yeah. So pretty cool, honestly, guys. So yeah, shout out to both of these companies, the Kangaroo team and Max Peating Rods. Yeah, honestly, pretty interesting stuff. Also, shout out to Dan here with his, letting us use the engine dyno and getting some data. Yeah, thanks for coming by. Heck yeah. Had fun today. For sure. All right, guys, so that's pretty much a wrap up of today's video. Hope you enjoyed it. Always nice getting a bit of data on the engine dyno here at Post Haste Performance. More or less, like and subscribe for